Out of the big fighting games that have been around for decades, Mortal Kombat is the most known for its inconsistency, with every title completely switching up the meta and content from the previous. But, of course, with the series being nearly 35 years old, most features, even if they didn't return in the very next game, did come back eventually. But that's not the case with the ones we're talking about today. Hello my fellow oddities, and welcome to every Mortal Kombat feature that never came back. Every gameplay quirk and mode we discuss here was only ever included in one game, for better or for worse. Couple things I want to clear up first though, I'm pretty strict on what I consider a completely unique feature, for example, Breakaway in MK11. While yes, it functions completely differently, much worse, it is still a form of breaker, so I don't consider that completely new enough to include it in this video, despite it not coming back, thank God, in Mortal Kombat 1. Speaking of which, MK1 will obviously not be touched on today since no games have come after it, so we don't know what is and what isn't coming back. I can tell you what I really hope doesn't though. And finally, the original 3 games will not be covered today since literally all their features eventually came back in some form. Besides for Fergalities. So the first game we're covering is Mortal Kombat Trilogy with the Aggressor bar. This was a very simple meter that went up as you hit your opponent, blocked or not. When it became full, you would get a speed and damage boost for a short amount of time. Doesn't sound like much, but it was banned in competitive play because it was quite broken on a lot of characters. But it does act as a sort of precursor to the super meter we're familiar with today. So, should Aggressor come back? No, we have a much better, more intricate version of it in modern titles. Moving on to MK4, maximum damage was a pretty self-explanatory system that put a damage cap on combos. If you reached this cap, your combo would be broken and both players would be reset. This was basically just the team giving up on trying to balance the game. Guess you can't have infinites if you just cut that shit out. So should maximum damage come back? Hell no. If this came back, I genuinely think it would kill this franchise forever. Just imagine NRS's next game reveal, Ed Boon walks up on stage and is like, "So for Mortal Kombat 13, we brought back a beloved feature that's been gone for 30 years. Maximum damage."
Oh my god, bro.
Staying on MK4 though, animated endings. This is the only game in the series to have fully 3D cutscenes for the endings. Now obviously, MK4 is infamous for these endings being not exactly the greatest work of art ever, but I'm surprised it's never even been attempted again. Every other game has either static images, minimally animated 2D art, and then you have Armageddon. Lazy. So you know what, respect to MK4 for trying. Should animated endings come back? Yes. On to Deadly Alliance now. This game is known for introducing many iconic features like the Crypt, Conquest, fighting styles, test your sight, but there are 2 that never returned, the first being the Power-Up. Power-Up was a special move input you could do that would give you a big boost in damage for all your attacks for a temporary period of time, a little similar to Aggressor. And like Aggressor, the move could be pretty busted on a few characters, namely Natara and Draman, who could just delete your health bar easily. So, should Power-Up come back? No. It feels kind of random and creates unnecessary balance issues. If it does return, it would have to have more meaning and be altered completely. Maybe something similar to the character unique power-ups in Injustice. The second Deadly Alliance feature is Impalement. Some characters with bladed weapons could sacrifice it to impale the opponent, causing a bleeding effect for the rest of the round. They removed this in Deception, and I'm not really sure why. Weapon stances obviously came back, so I guess they just actively decided to leave it out. I thought it was a neat feature. But maybe with the introduction of more stage interactions and also death traps, including constant health draining would be too much damage and hecticness throughout an average match. So, should Impalement come back? Depends. If they bring back weapon stances and stances in general, sure, but if they don't, I'm not really sure how it would work. Now on to Deception, which is where these one-time features begin getting really wacky, starting with Puzzle Kombat. This is basically just competitive Tetris with MK characters fighting each other in the foreground. You have to prevent the blocks from filling to the top of the screen by placing them strategically and breaking them with these MK logo blocks. And of course, it wouldn't be Mortal Kombat without the loser being absolutely destroyed and fatality. It was pretty cool and fun. Yeah, it is just Tetris and doesn't add too much Mortal Kombat flair, unlike the next mode we'll get into, but it's a great way to take a break from sweaty button mashing and just have some good times with a friend. So, should Puzzle Kombat come back? Well, I'm not really sure it fits modern MK, but being a part of something like an MK party pack with a bunch of fun minigames, hell yes it should return. But chess combat is where the heat really comes in. Chess combat replaces your typical chess pieces with Mortal Kombat characters, given roles such as leader, champion, sorcerer, shifter, and grunt. They all have powers and abilities unique to this Mortal Kombat version of chess. A shifter can transform into their opponent. A sorcerer has many buffs and debuffs they can place on themselves or the other side. Oh yeah, and if you meet another piece on the board, you can challenge them to combat and actually have a real Mortal Kombat match. As someone who doesn't understand chess at all, this is my favorite of the 3D era Mortal Kombat minigames, which get to the point of not even being minigames. Crazy how NRS has been giving us scraps for content, while Midway was giving us whole ass games within games. So should chess combat return? Yes, but I don't think it should come back in the games, but instead as a real physical board game. Come on, don't tell me that's not a good idea. NRS, WB, or I guess Netflix, or maybe Paramount, I don't really know what's going on. This would be an infinite money glitch. Or at least the amount of money that's in my bank account. One last feature that never returned from Deception, Harakiris. A Harakiri was a finishing move you'd have to perform on yourself before your opponent could get off their fatality. In it, your combatant would delete themselves from existence in an often over-the-top and exaggerated fashion. It's understandable why this hasn't come back. You might call it soft, but people are a lot more sensitive to glorifications of this act, so it would likely not go over well and cause a lot of controversy. So, should Harakiris return? I do like the concept, and it's the only finishing move that hasn't returned besides faction kills, so if they really lean into the goofiness and don't let it feel too real, I would like it to come back. On to Armageddon, which has quite a lot of big features that never came back. Firstly, let's round out the minigames by talking about Motor Kombat. Basically a Mario Kart clone featuring MK characters with their own unique abilities, such as Scorpion's Get Over Here, Jax's Ground and Pound, Cyrax's Bombs, etc. There are 5 arenas to race on, all varying in hazards and length, and overall it's a very fun time, probably the minigame I've spent the most time on. So should Motor Kombat return? Well, there is literally a 0% chance NRS ever brings this back, but like with Puzzle Kombat, I could see it coming back as an MK party minigame sort of thing, or maybe some official mobile or web game. Next up, Create a Fighter. I am very fond of this mode, as I've made a lot of videos utilizing it for horrific creations. Create a Fighter allowed you to create a combatant for you to use, and it's actually pretty intuitive. You can set different parts, recolor them, and customize every single move you have down to exact combo sequences. You can even write out an entire ending for your character, which will show up after beating Blaze, just like any of the real roster characters. Alright, what's my ending? I really enjoy Armageddon's Create a Fighter feature. Unfortunately, character creators are a pain to code, and especially for a fighting game where the characters are the game's whole identity, most developers don't bother with it and prefer costumes and gear systems, which is what more recent MK games have opted for. So, should Create a Fighter come back? I personally say absolutely, but it's very unlikely. If it didn't return in MK1, which had the perfect excuse to bring it back with the fusion characters, it's probably going to be a very long time. And lastly for Armageddon, create a fatality. Basically, there were way too many characters to make fatalities for each of them, so they let the player sort of do their own fatality by entering inputs that acted as different actions, ripping their arm off, tearing out their heart, etc. It was really lame, and people hated it. So should Create a Fatality come back? Yes! MK vs. DC also has quite a lot of one-time features, starting first with close combat. You could grab your opponent, bring them in close, and press buttons to attack. If your opponent matched your input, they could counter and break away. There's not much to say on this one, but I think like a lot of the MK vs. DC stuff we'll talk about, it interrupts the flow of combat a bit too much. So, should close combat return? No. Then we have Rage. Oh, Rage. The Rage meter acted pretty much exactly like the super meter introduced in the next game, MK9. However, instead of an X-ray, when this meter was full, you could activate Rage, doubling your damage and giving you armor. Yeah, it was very chaotic and there ain't no havoc in this game. Activating Rage before your opponent could basically be a guaranteed victory for certain characters, so yeah, it was an issue and not a fun one to deal with. So, should Rage come back? Nope. Not only was it broken, but there's also no story reason for it to be here anymore. MK vs. DC also had stage transition minigames. You know, when you would be falling midair or ramming your opponent through a building. It was basically just test your might. In fact, that's what it was called, but it was in the middle of a match and brought you to a new arena. So sort of a fusion between two other features. But again, like close combat, this interrupted game flow quite a bit, stopping any sort of momentum you had in the corner and resetting the two fighters. So, should stage transition minigames come back? Well, I would love for regular transitions to return, but the minigames, you can keep them. And finally, MK vs. DC had heroic brutalities for all of the superheroes that wouldn't kill people. Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, Jesus Christ! They all had, non-lethal methods of subduing the opponent. So should heroic brutalities come back? No, unless you want to carry them over to Injustice, I would not mind that. Now on to MK9, and we're going to cover both the regular version and the PS Vita port because that has some unique features of its own. Firstly, Tag Team. Now this one is actually kind of debatable. Endurance matches and even teaming up has always been a part of MK since the arcade era, and MK11 would also allow you to team up with a player online on certain towers. However, if we're talking Tag Team, as in the WWE sense of being able to tag your friend in and out at will, that is exclusive to Mortal Kombat 9, and despite constant begging for it to return, it still hasn't cause I guess people didn't play it enough. Sure, Ed. Anyways, you already know the answer. Should Tag Team come back? Yes, let's move on. Next up, we have the Challenge Tower, a personal favorite of mine. Honestly, a really great single-player mode that gives you something to do other than ladders and story mode. Challenge Tower featured 300 different challenges ranging from recreating the Shaolin Monk story, shooting down an army of enemies, fighting with modifiers, or beating 3 Shao Kahns with only Striker. Sounds hard, but then you remember Striker can just... A few months back, I replayed and completed the entire Challenge Tower, and it was a blast that kept my attention and enthusiasm the whole way through. Even when it was difficult, I never got heated because it was just so fun. MKX and on, however, were more focused on rotating daily, weekly, etc. towers that force an online connection and were a lot more generic. I'll take one really fun tower rather than constantly changing boring ones. So, should Challenge Tower come back? Yes. Moving on to the PS Vita port, we have Test Your Balance. This would never really work in a console or PC title because it requires you to tilt the Vita to make sure your character stays balanced. If not, they fall to their death MK4 style. It was neat, but like I said, not really realistic to come back besides in a mobile game or maybe even some Switch exclusive. So, should Test Your Balance come back? I mean, sure, if they can figure out a way to make it work, why not? Same goes for Test Your Slice, which is literally just Fruit Ninja. That's it. Again, I don't know how you would make this work without a touchscreen. So should Test Your Slice come back? If they can figure it out, I wouldn't mind. And now on to Mortal Kombat X, and I was shocked how little MKX actually innovated. There's not much here that is completely original to this game, and the stuff that was new stuck around for MK11. And you know what? I like that. You don't have to reinvent everything, just make sure the new stuff you do include is great and memorable. The one new feature from MKX that wasn't either of those things though were the faction battles. In MKX, upon starting the game, you had to pick a faction such as the Lin Kuei, Special Forces, Brotherhood of Shadow, etc. These factions would then fight, quote unquote, but really it's just whoever played the game and completed challenges the most would win. It was a cool concept that in execution never really intrigued most people, especially me. I mostly ignored it. But the coolest thing about it were the faction kills, which gave you multiple new fatalities to perform, including one that had smoke in it. That's my favorite one. So, should faction battles come back? I actually wouldn't mind, despite them not being executed the best in MKX. If you expand it, add more factions, and more interactivity beyond just playing the game normally basically, it could be awesome. And finally, we're at MK11, which had 2 features that did not come back in Mortal Kombat 1, the first being Crushing Blows. I'm actually really disappointed these didn't return in some form. Crushing Blows would occur once you met specific requirements before performing a move, and it would zoom in, exaggerate the move, sometimes show an X-ray, and do more damage or give bleeding damage. Some of them were very unbalanced though, and too easy to perform, especially for some characters who would be doing 3 to 4 of them on you per match, deleting your health bar. I think with some changes though, Crushing Blows could be the perfect replacement for the long, drawn-out cutscenes that are Fatal Blows and X-rays. A quick move that shows the damage you're inflicting without destroying momentum too bad is the perfect way to keep the brutality within the fight without, like I said, interrupting the flow of things. So, should Crushing Blows come back? I think so. I think they're a much better alternative to the super moves we're stuck with today. And the second feature are AI battles. This was kind of a weird one where you could customize the AI of the roster, making them more rushdown, grappling, or zoning focused, and either just let them fight for you in all the towers. That's what I did. I also use it to record footage when I don't feel like playing. Or you could have them battle your friends in the AI battles mode. I used this like once or twice, but watching soulless clankers fight without any commentary is kind of boring, so I never really got into it. So, should AI battles come back? No. I think there's probably better things for NRS to be spending their time on. But that'll do it for today. I wonder, what features in Mortal Kombat 1 will never return? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Subscribe and leave a like if you want, and that's wraps on this one, my fellow oddities. I'll see you next time.